everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on is love simply physical desire or something more. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. Anthony. Mr. Anthony, what you want to share?
Greetings. I am honoured to be here again as usual. Thank you, Sharif. Well, the journey of life is like a grain of sand drifting through the ocean of time, swinging between a pendulum of life and death, with an inevitable end. Now, the very meaning of existence gravitates around love, relationship. The key to life is love. Without love, there is nothing, and life becomes absolutely, utterly meaningless. Now, with regard to ancient Greece, a little bit of history. With regard to ancient Greece, the Greeks broke down love into three categories. They had eros, agape, and philia. Now, eros pertains to the carnal desires, erotic, sexual love. So, eros gravitates around the carnal aspect of love, erotic, sexual love. Agape is the highest form of love. It's an unconditional love, the kind of love that's attributed to God within monotheistic religions. It's a sacrificial kind of love. It's a persistent love. It's an eternal love that transcends everything. So this is the highest form of love. So within monotheistic religions, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, they would gravitate towards the kind of love known as agape, which is an unconditional love from God to the world. And this is the highest form of love. Then there's philia, which is a brotherly kind of love. It's more platonic. It's more platonic. It's a spiritual kind of love. So philia, in short, is a brotherly love, basically a love that's a spiritual kind of love. So breaking it down, ancient philosophers, Greek philosophers, had eros, carnal love, agape, unconditional love, and philia, brotherly love, which is platonic. Now, in terms of the scientific dimension of love, well, there is basically a lot of scientists that say that love, the main control center for love is actually the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the main region of the brain, the main control center of the brain, which regulates love, which is part of the limbic system. It's part of the limbic system. And this is actually a very interesting notion. And a lot of scientists argue that it's actually the hypothalamus, which is part of the limbic system, which is the main control center of love. So actually, when in love, they claim that it's actually something that's measurable in terms of biochemistry. There are actually biochemical changes within the brain during the time of when you're in love. So there are incredible chemical alterations within the brain. Now, for example, lust is governed by estrogen and testosterone in men and women. Attraction is driven by adrenaline, dopamine, and serotonin. The long-term attachment, like bonding, is governed by different set of chemicals and hormones altogether. So this is the scientific dimension within trying to describe love. As I said, scientists claim that the hypothalamus, which is part of the limbic system, is the main control center for love. And as I have broken it down, lust is governed by estrogen and testosterone. Then we have the attraction side, which is driven by adrenaline, dopamine, and serotonin. And the long-term attachment, which is bonding, is governed by different set of chemicals and hormones altogether. So this is a scientific breakdown, a scientific dimension of the science behind love. Now, in terms of the theological dimension, aside from sexuality, love is expressed through high moral conduct. So, in other words, good ethics. In other words, you are what you do. So, aside from sexuality, love is expressed through high moral conduct in terms of theology. Good ethics, good morality. You are what you do. The fundamental law of morality is practice what you preach. Now, the question is, from where do we get this innate understanding of right and wrong? From where do we get this innate, inbuilt, if you like, understanding of what is right and wrong? This is known as the anthropological argument, by the way. The anthropological argument for God's existence is that God, when he created man, made man in his image, and he built us in such a way that we have this innate understanding of right and wrong. This is known as the anthropological argument. The anthropological argument, which is one of the arguments for God's existence. So ultimately, a theologian would say that the sheer fact that we have this understanding, this innate understanding of right and wrong, is actually something inbuilt within the very nature of man. within the creation of man himself, which is known as the anthropological argument. So why is man morally sensitive? This is because the Creator implanted within the soul of man, within the very fabric of our being, when he made us, this understanding of right and wrong. Now, an atheist would argue that man is morally sensitive as a result of biological evolution, and through so basically we develop this understanding of right and wrong through biological evolution, and that morality and ethics must be grounded in logic. This is based on social cultural relativism. So morality has to be grounded in logic. Now, in a sense, I'm a theist, I'm a theistic evolutionist. In a sense, yes. For example, it's not always easy to make the right moral decision. There is what is known as situation ethics, moral relativism. There are many shades of grey within life. So it becomes difficult sometimes to make that right moral choice based on the complexity of life. So yes, morality can be grounded in logic and has to be grounded in logic. But fundamentally speaking, morality needs to be grounded in theology. Morality needs to be grounded in God, who carved within us the very understanding of what is right and wrong when he created us in his image. And I'll finish with this for now. It's very important to note, that science itself is ethically neutral. Science does not have a method for determining what is right and wrong. Okay, I repeat that again. Science itself is ethically neutral. It doesn't have a method for determining what is right and wrong. Okay? This can only pertain towards the creator within, as I described, the anthropological argument that God, when he created man in his image, and he implanted within the very soul of man, within the very fabric of man, an understanding of right and wrong, and so forth. And ultimately, love springs from the creator. This is where the whole point genesis of love stems from the creator himself. I'll close for now with that.
Thank you. Professor Chi, I know you are a very good dancer and you have a lot of good friends. So, what is love?
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad that Anthony gave
Don't start dancing, huh?
Hi, Anthony. Hi,
How
Donald.
are you?
You see, our Creator must have considered love one of the most important subject in His goal of creation. Okay, let's say this first. Okay, and I have spent a lot of time studying this subject. Okay, but I would never consider myself an authority or expert because it's I because so many people want to talk about this subject, but nobody can really say anything that is very concrete. And I think I have reached a point that I know more than most people. You see, so I'm glad that you call me for such a long you really try to get me on this to say something about this. Okay, the chief point I would like to make is this. Okay, this is a design. Okay, this is design in the creation. Okay, how does God create love? Okay, what it does is, I'm glad Anthony gave a preview of this whole thing. Okay, physiological thing. Okay, this dopamine give you pleasure. Okay,
Dopamine,
pleasure center. Okay, then you have something else. In love, one of the thing is this loyalty. Okay, the loyalty to God is the face of God, love of human to God. Okay, this loyalty. If you put loyalty very close to this pleasure center, you will create a person who will exhibit deep love. Okay, a person like all four of us here, I would say, have the loyalty very close to the pleasure center. Okay, so we're all capable of very deep love. Some people have it very far away, so they cannot exhibit this deep loyalty. So this love, their love is sort of very, very weak. Okay. Okay, this I studied this. I actually go look at everything, about this subject. Okay, and the one thing I need to point out to the young people audience here is this: they should go into research one subject. The subject is groundhog. Okay, groundhog. There are two. The groundhog is so monopoly, so loyal. Okay, let's not use any technical term. They are so loyal to their mate. Okay, they marry for I don't so loyal. One of the most loyal animal to their mate is groundhog. But there's two type of groundhog. The majority, the ones knowledgeable to the researcher are the very loyal type, but there's another type which is not loyal. Okay, does not go for this deep love, this type. Okay, mate for life stuff. Okay, so there's two type of groundhog. What's the difference? Okay, so everyone should research into this. What's the difference? The difference is the closeness of the love center and the happiness center and the pleasure center. How close they are. If they're very close, then it's very loyal. Deep love. Okay, made for life. If it's far away, then there's very weak love. But there is a physiology. You cannot say this is all physical. Okay, this has to go back to our creator. Okay, where the creator put the faculty close to the pleasure center. Okay, to create this feeling. Okay, therefore our creator must have placed faith very close to the pleasure center. Therefore, religion is the only thing that people willing to sacrifice their life for. It's more powerful. Faith is more powerful than life itself. You see, so there is this tie. So Anthony put it quite, it's not totally clear. Okay, but it's getting there. He has the good feeling. Actually, he has. I just listened to him a little bit. I think, you see, this is basically what it's amount to. You see, but you can talk this, forever, never get anything out of it. You see. Here I give you one sense. Okay, not just physiological, but it's really dealing with the center of social science. Okay, it's the subject. Love is a social science subject. Okay, one's feeling, one's behavior, So this is one of the most important points in creation. So, with that, I think, we captured maybe 90% of the whole picture of love, as far as I know. I can speak all day on this thing, my experiences, things like that. You see. So therefore, if you want to find a loyal friend, okay, test on his loyalty. It's very important. You see, somebody you want to do it permanently. You don't want to have lots of casual friends. You want to just a few very loyal friends. I have 10 mentors. all of them exhibit very deep love. Okay. For those deep, great thinkers, they all have this loyalty, the faculty of loyalty close to the pleasure center in their brain. Okay. People creating in such a way tend to be, the only way to be great is to have such a brain. Okay. For people who are very casual about everything, those people are not getting anywhere. You see, so all this seems to tie into the social science, the design of the creator. Okay. So basically that's my main point. So I will not dilute with any more comments. Okay, so Don, your turn.
Well done.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Donald.
Well, it seems that when we talk about love, there's different kinds of things that we're talking about. I mean, there's romantic love, like the love that you have with your wife or your husband or your mate. And then there's people have love of their country and they love their friends. And we use the word to mean different things. And I agree with you completely that it's social science. I think one thing that we would think about love is that love is an emotion, or there's an emotion of love. You feel love for somebody. It's something that you feel. And when you feel something inside, what's happening is your interoceptive nervous system. There's a part of your nervous system that keeps track of what's going on inside you. So when you feel things inside you, like your stomach feels like it's churning, or you feel various kinds of, you feel like you're tense and your muscles are tense and things like that. That's all due to the action of the interoceptive nervous system. And emotions are not, for a long time, people thought that emotions were hardwired into us. So there's a guy named Paul Ekman who wrote a book called Emotions Revealed. And he studied emotions, and he went around and he did various kinds of experiments where he tried to prove that a smile meant the same thing in all cultures. And, he reduced things to 7 basic emotions. And what he didn't do was release his data. And so what wound up happening is that people tried to replicate what Ekman did, and they couldn't. So basically, we went down this rabbit hole for quite a while, and it got to be such a big deal. There's a television show called Lie to Me. And the premise of Lie to Me is that these consultants can tell by looking at people's faces and their body language whether they're lying or not, and other things about what's going on in their unconscious process. And this is based on Paul Ekman and his work. I was at a conference once on deception detection, and I was very taken with Paul Ekman at the time. But all the researchers there just said, well, he's kind of a fraud. And so what we now think is that emotions are social constructions. So basically, people get feelings, and they identify those feelings. Just like anything around us, we identify it. There's lots of things and lots of patterns in this world that we don't particularly name. And then there's patterns and things in this world that we do name, and they are important to us. I mean, in some languages there's more colors, in other languages there's fewer colors. How we divide up the spectrum is not the same in different cultures. And in Norway, and so the words we have for emotions and the emotions that we identify are cultural. There's words for there's a Norwegian word for an emotion which is the feeling that you get when you're relaxed by a warm fire, and you know, it just things are warm and cozy, and that they consider that an emotion just like anger or fear or any other emotion. And there's a wonderful book on this called How Emotions Are Made, and she suggested in it that you could make up your own emotions. So she made up an emotion for the feeling that you get when you just finished a bowl of potato chips. You know, there's a combination of regret, guilt, and satisfaction. That's just this feeling that you get when that happens. And you can make up your own emotions. Emotions are simply the combination of what's going on in your interoceptive networks that we've generalized and named. And I don't really know if you say you have an emotion that the same thing's going on with you as what's going on with me. I mean, some people wind up being stressed and angry from things that don't stress and anger me. I mean, it's just different. And some people, when they're angry, report that their stomach churns, but mine doesn't. But so my feeling of anger is going to be different than what you feel in your internal networks for anger or fear or anything else like that. So when we think then about what love is at one level, it's the feelings that we get when we're interacting with somebody special. So, for instance, and that makes it very, very interesting, because if you take a couple, like when they're young, and you know, there's a huge sexual component to it, and it's kind of an overriding part of the relationship when you're first getting together, and you know, you're young, and you know, there's other parts to it too, but you know that, and you can see that there's interoceptive feelings. You know, there's feelings of being sexually attracted, and that's something that's built into us as creatures. Because if we weren't sexually attracted to each other, we wouldn't last long. So, but as a relationship matures, we start finding other components of it. And you notice that it's very common for relationships to have ups and downs over a long period of time. Like people that have been married for a long period of time go through rough spots often. And what they do is they identify new things about how their feelings, that the internal feelings that they have. They identify different things as love. They change what the feelings that they have that they call love. And so since love isn't a concrete thing, since emotions aren't concrete things, they're social, we can have the possibility of changing them. And so the emotions that we have, the love of our country or the love of our friends and all of those kinds of things, are basically they're how we identify the feelings that we have in our interoceptive networks. So love is it's a mechanical process in our bodies, but it's tied. It's not, but it's. I shouldn't say that. What it is it's our description, or a way we identify the processes inside of our bodies. I personally go with what the great scientist Laplace, scientist and mathematician Laplace, said about the idea of God. Is he said, "I have no need of that hypothesis. There's nothing anyone has ever said that's indicate that I've ever seen that has showed me that there's any possibility that there's a creator." And I I think that we evolved, that these things are part of us that makes us be able to survive, and that's what I think love is.
Thank you, Mr. Adam.
Hey, good morning, guys. Everyone. So I think it's just important, like that we talk about how to show love to people and how to express love in a way that's powerful and empowering to people like young as well as old. That could be like anything from just like being the first person to go out like on a dance floor and start dancing. That's showing love, or if it's like a one-on-one conversation, like being able to connect with somebody or like reach out to them. That's also a way of showing love, or like making someone a meal, cooking something for them, or just making them a drawing. These are all great ways of like showing love, and I think it's just important more than ever in today's society that we like aren't afraid to do like little things and show our love, and like and even do it in a way that people can see that we're expressing our love, like not trying to do stuff and act like we're too cool to like be like loving or like care for people and our loved ones and stuff like that. So to me, that's what love helps us do, is like take that extra step that maybe we wouldn't normally do for somebody or the world if we didn't have the love, the power of love to be better and to help people heal and find joy and like express themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony.
Yeah, well, I'll kind of go over what I said before. Again, going back into the philosophical dimension, the journey of life is like a grain of sand tossed into the ocean of time, swinging between a pendulum of life and death with an inevitable end. The very meaning of our life, the very meaning of existence gravitates around love. It gravitates around love. Okay? Relationship. The key to our existence is love and relationship. Outside of that, life becomes meaningless, completely meaningless, absolutely meaningless. Now, the point genesis of love, being a theistic evolutionist, the point genesis of love stems from God. When God created us, he created us, and this is the anthropological argument, he created us with an understanding of what is right and wrong. It's intrinsically designed within the very nature of man. This is known as the anthropological argument. We are morally sensitive because this was implanted within the very fabric of our being. And this is known as the anthropological argument. So everything gravitates around love and relationship. It's fundamental to our very existence. As I mentioned, in ancient Greece, the philosophers back in ancient Greece broke down love into three categories. You had eros, which was erotic sexual love. Eros, known as in ancient Greece, was erotic sexual love, the carnal dimension. Agape, which is the highest form of love, which is an unconditional love, the kind of love, as I've mentioned, attributed to God within monotheistic religions. A sacrificial kind of love, an unchanging love, an unconditional love, which transcends all forms of love. Then we have philia, which is a brotherly kind of love, which is known as platonic love. It's a spiritual kind of love. So this is what was discussed during the time of the ancient Greeks back in ancient Greece. A bit of history there for you. From a scientific dimension, mentioning what Donald was saying, we can look at the hypothalamus. We can look at the hypothalamus, which is part of the limbic system. And this week, a lot of scientists say that this is the main control center of love. So the hypothalamus, which is part of the limbic system, is the main control center for love, looking at this from a scientific perspective. So basically, when in love, there's a lot of biochemistry taking place within the brain, all sorts of biochemistry and chemical activity and changes within the brain. Okay. And if I was to break this down, for example, lust, as I said before, lust is governed by estrogen and testosterone within both man and female. Attraction is driven by adrenaline, dopamine, and serotonin. And then you have the long-term attachment in terms of bonding. Now, this is governed by different chemicals, different hormones, and different brain chemicals at play when it comes to long-term attachment in terms of bonding and so forth. So this is the scientific dimension. But beyond the scientific dimension, there's the theological one, which I said, which is very important. Love ultimately, and I'm a theistic evolutionist, stems from the Creator. And this is the reason why we are morally sensitive. We are morally sensitive because, again, going back to what I said, the anthropological argument. By design, we were made in God's image, so we have this understanding of what is right and what is wrong. We are morally sensitive. And the reason why is because of this. Design. We are designed by God to have an understanding of what is right and wrong, and basically, fundamentally, to have that experience of love, which stems from God in all creation. So this is now more of the theological perspective. Now, as I said before, an atheist would argue that man is morally sensitive as a result of biological evolution. So biological evolution, as a result of biological evolution, we have become morally sensitive and so forth. Okay, and that morality and ethics ultimately has to be grounded in logic as a result of social, cultural relativism. Now, to us, in a certain sense, I would say yes, as I mentioned before, because, for example, it's not always easy to make the right moral choice because life is complex. You have what is known as situation ethics, moral relativism. Life is, you've got many shades of gray, so it's not always difficult to make the right moral judgment and the right moral choice. So it becomes, in a sense, morality does have to be grounded in logic, absolutely. But fundamentally speaking, it needs to be grounded in theology. Fundamentally speaking, it needs to be grounded in theology. So yes, logic, yes, but fundamentally it needs to be grounded in theology. And as I mentioned before, this is very important. Science tells us a lot about the universe. I mean, I've discussed this in my presentations, which you can watch on YouTube, Science, Philosophy, and Theology, how science proves God's existence. And I'm a theist, a theistic evolutionist, and hopefully we'll be debating Richard Dawkins at some point. But science, with all its brilliance, science is ethically neutral. It doesn't have a method for determining what is right and what is wrong. So when it comes to morals and ethics, this pertains to theology. I've described it, obviously, from a scientific perspective as the hypothalamus, the limbic system, the chemical alterations within the brain in terms of lust, governed by estrogen and testosterone, attraction, driven by dopamine and serotonin and adrenaline, and obviously the long-term attachment in terms of bonding, which is governed by other hormones and other chemicals. But ultimately, beyond all of that, love is connected to God. Morality and ethics has to be connected to God. Otherwise, it becomes subjective and chaos emerges. Going back to what I said, I do realize that obviously within life, you get all sorts of very complex situations, shades of gray. So there is logic does have to come into morality as well. So morality has to be grounded also in logic as well as theology. But fundamentally speaking, it has to be bound by theological principles. Now, in terms of the existence of God, I could start on the show and start going into my arguments. I've done so many presentations. My very first presentation with Sharif was Science, Philosophy, and Theology, where I went through a long hour and 20-minute discussion about the laws of science and philosophy and theology and how ultimately God does exist. And I back up my arguments using science and rational thought and philosophy to back up my belief system for the existence of God. I would just mention this. A lot of pantheists use this, believe in this, the eternality of matter. They say that matter has always existed. No, pantheists are basically atheists. A pantheist will say that God exists, but not that God exists in the real sense. God, by definition, is an eternal being that transcends time and space, exists independent of both time and space eternally. He is the creator of all life, so he is separate from his creation. Pantheism says that the totality of the universe, including man and everything in it, is God. Well, that is a sexed up version of atheism. Pantheon and atheism are the same thing. They're completely the same thing. The pantheist is more deceiving. The atheist says, I don't believe in God. The pantheist says, I do believe in God, but the truth is he doesn't. He just redefines the term for God, that everything within the universe is part of God. Well, that isn't God, because God, by definition, in a true monotheistic sense, is an eternal being that transcends time and space, independent of time and space. Space and time is an electromagnetic field, 0-point electromagnetic quanta. He dwells outside the sphere of time and space and can see the past, present, and future frozen as one. A bit like the block universe, in fact. So this is fundamentally my belief system, that God transcends time and space. So most pantheists, going back to what I was saying, and atheists will say, well, the universe has always existed. So if the universe has always existed, we don't need God. Well, the universe has not always existed. We know that there was a point genesis with the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago, when the universe came into being, when all matter was condensed into a point and suddenly exploded. And it was fine-tuned, very important. So we know that the universe is not eternal. Why? Because the universe is expanding. We know through dark energy that the universe is expanding. Approximately 70% of the universe is dark energy. So there's this expansion at play. And we know that the universe is expanding. So it tells us that the universe at one point was a cluster. That's the first one. Not to mention that the second law of thermodynamics, the immutable metaphysical law of the universe, is taking place in the cosmos. Look at a star. We see a star succumb to gravitational collapse. We see death within the universe as a star succumbs to gravitational collapse and so forth. So we see the second law of thermodynamics, the immutable metaphysical law, taking place within the cosmos. When a star succumbs to gravitational collapse, it dies and becomes either a black hole or a neutron star and so forth. So there is death within the cosmos, which indicates that there was a point genesis to the universe. Also, background cosmic radiation, which we have detected, tells us that an explosion took place. So we know we know that. And also, the fact is this: if the universe was eternal, it would have reached a point where it would have used all usable energy. The cosmos would have used all its usable energy, but the universe is full of cosmic energy. So these four facts tell us that the universe had a point genesis, which indicates that there has to be an eternal being that transcends time and space and is the mechanism behind all of life, including love. And as I mentioned before, the anthropological argument, which tells us that we are morally sensitive because we have been intrinsically designed by God to be morally sensitive, to understand what is right and wrong. And this has been carved within the very fabric of our being. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Professor Ching.
Yes. Well, let me start one more time on the same track. Okay. Our Creator must have considered love as one of the most important parts of the creation. But our Creator does not necessarily want us to love Him. Okay. And also, this talk about morality doesn't really fit that much into this. I do not disagree with Anthony on that point. Okay, I think this is it's a subject that has its very, very important function. Okay, and Anthony talk is very it's sort of distracting. It has so many elements. Okay, let me just mention this most important element. Since we are only, each one has some time to talk, not really, it's not open open-ended discussion. So emotion is the key to motivation, which is the key to success. Okay, this is the key point. Okay, so love is the strongest of all emotion. Okay, you see, love, when it translates into it becomes faith. such as love God. Okay. People are willing to sacrifice their life for the love of God. Okay. So I would say, from just observation, the love of God is the strongest of love. Okay. Because more people died for that than for anything else. Okay. You look into history, even today, the Arabs are still dying for the love of God. So it's a very strong power, strong motivation. Okay, then the next is the romantic love of the young people. Okay, which give them, there's so much pleasure built into this romantic love. So this this accounts for only when you're young, you're willing to die for love. Okay, when you get older, you sort of water down this feeling. Okay. Then also there's soldiers love the love for their country. They're willing to die for the country. Okay. This is all this are evidence of motivation and the success. You see, a soldier who love for his country, he willing to die for it. He will make a really good soldier. If a person who's afraid to die, not a good soldier. Okay. So love is the strongest motivation for action. Okay, so you need to like something. We must work in project with love. Okay, so this is advice to young people. We must focus. We must consider love as a motivation, as a main point in whatever we try to do. You see. So, and this is all built into this structure of the mind, the pleasure center, and the faculty. Okay, some faculty give you pleasure, and so you love this project, and you carry it out. Okay, so this is basically my feeling. I want to focus us on this very wide, complex subject. On just this one point of emotion and bringing this motivation. This motivation is necessary for success. Okay, so basically that is the construction. Okay, it's a social
Thank you.
science phenomenon. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Donald.
See, uh, well, I we can go on. We can go on to a more literary level. I think when Anthony's been talking about morality and integrating that with the idea of love, and there, when you talk about the idea that morality comes from God, then my immediate question is, which God? There's over 3,000 of them. And it seems to me that privileging one over the others is like, why? I mean, what is it that would make me do that? I mean, there's no reason except for some faith, and faith basically means believing things without evidence, and that's just not useful for me. And I also want to I just want to mention the whole thing about cause. I think David Hume really laid it out very, very well, and which is he pointed out that cause and effect is really us seeing some sort of a pattern where the same thing happens over and over again. And so we say to ourselves, okay, this thing happened before that thing, and therefore this thing caused this thing. I mean, looking into cause is fairly complicated. Aristotle had, 5 different kinds of causes. And so there's no absolute one meaning for cause. But when we spend a lot of time thinking about the cause of the universe and the cause of things like that, we may be barking up the wrong tree, because we see things in a way that our bodies and our culture and things like that have us see things. And I'm very convinced that the Big Bang happened, but I also think that we don't know how that little dot of energy got there. And like reasoning that because it was there had to be God is, it's just, it goes with what Charles Sanders Peirce pointed out in one of his essays. Is he said, logic is the way I think, and illogic is the way you think. And so people really aren't that logical. They think they're logical, but it's being logical is it's fairly difficult, and it's also not. We like to think that logic is absolute, but abductive logic, which is one of the three types of logic, is not. It's a matter of guessing. And so we're using abduction when we start talking about like guessing what causes are that we don't really have access to. And we're making hypotheses. But if we have hypotheses that we can't test, then, what do we do about that? And like we can reason as much as we want that our hypothesis is correct. But in science, it's often the case that with all of our reasoning that I have a hypothesis is correct, when we actually test the hypothesis, we find out we're wrong. And so I don't think it's particularly useful. I think that, and I also think that morality is, there's a lot of different people who've come up with a lot of different moral systems, and there's a lot of different people who've different cultures. The Greeks are different than the Hindus, which are different than Zoroastrians, which are different than the Buddhists, and all these different worlds. Different people have different views of morality, but underlying all of that, human beings have to help each other. A human being can't exist on their own. It's not possible. There's stories like Robinson Crusoe and things like that, where some person goes out and lives all by themselves, but that can't be. I mean, we have to help each other in order to survive. So we evolved to have these to be kind of part of a larger organism. It's almost like the human race is an organism in itself, and we're all cells within inside of this organism, where we have to work together. And underlying some of the things that are obvious moral things, like not killing somebody or not stealing from them or hurting them and things like that, that are, common across all moral systems. If you just think about it, and the case was saying, well, we're one organism and we all have to work together to survive, you can see that those things just wouldn't be healthy for the larger organism. I mean, if people go around killing people and hurting each other, then we're not gonna. You can't survive as a species. And so you can. There's different moral things, like right now in Iran, there's a revolution going on, and it has to do with them having the Islamic Republic having a kind of morality that they developed that requires people to do things that are so draconian that people are flipping out. I mean, and it got started because of some hair was showing on a woman from her burqa, and then they killed her for it. And that just got people so upset. And that's according to the Islamic Republic, that was immoral. She was doing something immoral. And so to us, that's absurd. That doesn't seem to have anything to do with morality. So I say that, but underlying, there are things that are going to be across all cultures, because we have to have them as human beings. But back to love, I think that connection that we have to have with each other, that is really a beautiful thing. And when we start learning that every other person in this world knows things that we don't know, every person, a street person, a homeless person, anybody can teach you something. And you can start to find out, you start to realize that, and you can, and in a sense, you start to love everyone. And when you get to that point where you can understand that every person is a door into another world, and every person is part of what helps you survive, then that feeling that I'm talking about, that you identify, that connection is one of the things that you can identify as love, and I think it's a wonderful thing.
Thank you, Mr. Adam.
Hey guys.
Jeffrey.
So, yeah, I think it's important to note on how love helps us forgive ourselves of things we might not think we have control over, and forgive other people even who have done us wrong, because at some point love is beyond morality in a way. And when we love ourselves despite things, and we try to love ourselves like so we can accept that our sufferings, that we chose our own sufferings in this lifetime, so we can love ourselves beyond what we're struggling with and our own suffering, so we can change the world sort of, and also love the world despite its sufferings. And it's sort of loving yourself from a cosmic sort of standpoint, that you came to this life to grow through these sufferings and to love yourself, to learn that love is stronger than any kind of suffering. So yeah, it's just and people say, God is love and that we are love too. So at some point it's that love is beyond God and ourselves. It's like God is sort of like a concept. And even at some point, we as people as individuals are sort of concepts. It's sort of their egos. But to love ourselves beyond our own life, after our deaths and from before our own births, is a cosmic sort of love that can sort of help us overcome our struggles and sufferings, to help other people feel better and to like make the world better, I guess, and to make life more awesome.
Thank you. This is actually excellent discussion. I believe that it's create some valuable thoughts about love. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining today's session. Thank you, Mr. Anthony, Professor Ching, Professor Donalds, and Mr. Jeffrey for joining today's session. Thank you. Bye bye and take care.
Thank you.
Bye.